What is going on, folks? Meteorologist Mike Linden here, coming at you live from the My Radar studio in Orlando, Florida. I hope that your day is going well here. Looks like we have lost my camera. Give me 1 second here. Gonna have to get that loaded back up. Stand by. Okay, we should be good to go now. There it is. Fantastic. What's going on, everybody? Meteorologist Mike Linden here, coming at you live from the My Radar studio in Orlando, Florida. Hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. I am here to talk to you about what the latest forecast information is for Hurricane Dorian. As you can see, it is still rocking and rolling just to the east coast of Florida and smashing the Bahamas. We've started to see some pictures of the damage left behind, and it's not pretty, folks. Keep in mind, it is still raining there. It is still wind there. There's still crazy wind there. The storm surge is still nuts too. So please keep the folks of Grand Bahama and the Bahamas in general in your thoughts. So what we are going to talk about today, or at least right now I should say, are the latest forecast information from Hurricane Dorian in the National Hurricane Center. So let me pull it up here. The storm, by the way, is now a Category 2 hurricane at 110 miles per hour. Keep in mind, though, in order to be Category 3, it's 111 mile per hour winds. So we are talking literally on the line of it being a 2 versus a 3. It's also moving now at 2 miles per hour toward the northwest. In fact, over the past 24 hours, Dorian has only moved 20 miles. I mean, you could cover more of that distance in your commute to work. In fact, a human being is capable of walking at a speed of 3 miles per hour. So Dorian is moving very, very slowly, but it is moving. It has also begun to expand in size. It's kind of a weird phenomenon, but as hurricanes begin to weaken and they lose that structure within the eye, whether it's through upwelling or an eye wall replacement, the wind field actually begins to expand a little bit. It's kind of like the last hurrah, if you will, with a weakening hurricane, as far as it maintaining that really strong kind of structure. I know that's kind of weird verbiage to use there, but that expanding wind field. So even though you are not necessarily in the cone, if you are near it, very likely going to feel those very strong winds. So that's the latest from the NHC. And as I do with these live chats, if you have any questions for me at any point, I've got the chat open next to me here, and I should be able to take your questions as we get to it. Cool. I just want to be sure that the stream is still live. Fantastic. All right, so let's advance here. Again, notice there really isn't much of an eye left to Dorian. It's still there. It's still right about here, but you can see that really kind of picturesque structure is gone, at least on infrared. You'll be able to see it on radar, but infrared pulling in the satellite imagery, and you just can't really see it now in the upper levels. I also want to point out, look how darn close this thing is to the coastline. I mean, it is right there to West Palm Beach, or at least the outer bands of it. And that is why the National Hurricane Center has kept all of these watches and warnings in effect. The yellow color is a tropical storm warning that does impact the metro of Orlando. You can see the eastern coast of the state, pretty much from Jupiter all the way northward through to Melbourne and near Jacksonville, a hurricane warning, although that has begun to kind of drop off at least a little bit in some spots, as the storm, at least the path of it now, expected to remain almost entirely off the coastline. But this is the last 24 hours of Dorian, and just look, just watch. Barely moving. I mean, it is very rare to see a hurricane of this size, this strength, just kind of sit. Really. Dorian, for many reasons, is going to continue to be studied, but this is a big reason why. Just sitting there, just kind of staring at you menacingly, right? It It is one monster of a storm that just a couple of days ago, again, was one of the most powerful storms on record in the Atlantic Basin. It has now weakened, but that does not mean that we are out of the woods just yet. Now, here is the NORAD radar loop, and like I said, you can still kind of see that eye here in radar. In the infrared, you can see that it's pretty much gone, but infrared's not going to show us the precipitation. It's going to show us the cloud tops and the clouds. That's what satellite imagery is. Radar data is what you are seeing here. Notice the outflow bands as well, and these outer bands here starting to push some storms inland near Merritt Island, Orlando, near Sebastian, and into West Palm Beach. So feeling some pretty gusty winds along the coastline of Florida as well, up near 40 to 45 miles per hour has been reported. And again, barely seeing Dorian move, but there is the eye not far at all from West Palm Beach. In fact, 80 or so miles off the coastline. So you want to talk about a close call. Well, this is very similar to Hurricane Matthew. In fact, Matthew came a little closer in some spots, within 5 to 10 miles in some spots. It's the eye that has to make landfall in order to deem the hurricane making landfall, not just any part of it. So here is the latest cone from the NHC, and they have, again, made some slight adjustments to it, but this is kind of the best case scenario, at least at this point, for the eastern coast of Florida. Over the day today, expected to move north and begin that turn toward the northeast. Right now, it's moving toward the northwest, very slowly, might I add, at 2 miles per hour, but over the next 24 to 48 hours, forecasts expect to pull that out toward the east. And look at this, by tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., you can see how close the NHC has that to the coastline. I mean, 100 miles. You're still going to get those likely tropical storm force winds on the outer bands there, but as far as the core goes and the eye moving over the state, well, that is no longer necessarily the case, as the NHC has pushed the cone off to the east, and it is likely to remain that way, running parallel to the coastline, much how Hurricane Matthew and even how Hurricane Floyd did at this point in the year as far as making landfall in Florida. Now, even though the path has improved for the state of Florida, it is not for Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Now potentially looking at landfall in South Carolina. It is still a couple of days out. Thursday at 8 a.m., that's where the storm is expected to be. But notice Charleston, South Carolina, the lowlands there. I know that Somerville is a suburb of Charleston. You're also looking towards Savannah, pretty much on the line there, and then pushing into Wilmington, North Carolina, and even near Cape Hatteras. There is potential for a landfall in this general area, at least now that the cone is encompassing the coastline there. So while a landfall may not necessarily occur with this intensity of a storm, even in Category 2, you're talking about some very serious storm surge and localized flash flooding along the coastline here. We can take a look at the wind probability here, and what this is essentially showing you is where the strongest winds are going to be at above 40 miles per hour. We're talking tropical storm strength, and it's the coastline, go figure, from Fort Pierce all the way to Daytona Beach and even up and into Jacksonville, starting to see a bit of those stronger winds. But again, as we've discussed, one of the biggest factors that this storm is going to make an impact on the coastline will be with the storm surge. A storm surge warning now in effect for near Lantana Beach, north of it, almost all the way into South Carolina in some spots. So this is probably going to be bad news for a lot of the coastal areas and for potential beachgoers as well. As you can see, this storm surge warning stretching from all the way through Cape Canaveral, the Melbourne area, through into Daytona Beach, Jacksonville, Flagler Beach, and St. Mary's, pushing into Brunswick, Georgia, even Savannah, Georgia, and all the way to near Charleston for South Carolina, near Jamestown there. Right now, a storm surge watch in effect for the coastline of North Carolina, the Myrtle Beach area, but that could potentially change here with the next update coming at 2 o'clock, and potentially as well for the next big path update to drop at 5 o'clock. But one thing I want to point out to you here in the active watches and warnings, look at this red color here for South Carolina. that is a hurricane warning, that red color. And for the National Hurricane Center to put that out, considering this is where Dorian is right now, and this would be 2 days later, it just goes to show you the area that they are keying in on to really watch out for. Keep in mind, tropical storm warning still in effect for the coastline here from Jacksonville through Savannah and into the Charleston area. But right here, that is going to be an area to watch. The rest of North Carolina and the South Carolina coastline as well. But right in here, this red color, that is really going to be an area to watch out for. I'm looking over at the comments here. Did you miss the hat giveaway? Yes, we did the hat giveaway on Facebook. Stay tuned for some more giveaways and more future live streams in the future. This graphic really just going to show us all of the reports that have popped up over the past 48 hours, and all of those that you're seeing for the most part are strong gusty winds between 40 and 45 mile per hour readings, and what do you know, all up and down the coastline, as well as videos of coastal erosion and some localized flash flooding in some spots. We've retweeted a couple of those videos, mind you, so either scroll down a little bit on our Twitter feed or just search for Aaron J. Jack. He is a storm chaser that works with us. In fact, he was actually here not too long ago. I think he's trying to plan his next move where he's going to go, but he posted some video from Vero Beach from, what is today? Today's Tuesday, right? From yesterday, Monday, Labor Day. And it was pretty wet down there, folks. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the historic tornado or hurricane tracks, rather, to come really close to Florida that a lot of that Dorian has been compared to. The first of which, Hurricane Andrew, skirted through southern Florida, kind of changed the game for the housing code in the state of Florida before working its way through Louisiana. It's a very similar path, mind you, to Hurricane Katrina. Just to the east of Florida is Hurricane Matthew from 2016, taking a super similar path to Dorian, going right up and through the Bahamas. In fact, all three of these storms impacting the Bahamas in some way. Very, very unlucky. But notice as well that Dorian, at this point in time, following a super duper similar path to Hurricane Matthew, even on intensity levels as well. You can see that Matthew was a Hurricane 4 near the Bahamas. Of course, Dorian was a Hurricane 5 and has weakened to a 2. Dorian still sits down here, whereas Matthew weakened to a 2 somewhere off the eastern coastline of Georgia near the Jacksonville area, and that brought tons of flooding to Jacksonville. But Dorian, of course, a different storm. And then here is Hurricane Floyd that actually impacted parts of the Northeast and the New York City metro. So all three of these storms, super significant. Of course, no storm is going to be identical to the last, but it is very interesting to see the way how Florida, particularly the eastern coast of it, has avoided a strike from all three of these storms and potentially from Dorian as well. So let me make this full screen so you guys can get a better look at this here. What we're going to do is we are going to take a look at the steering flow and what is happening as to how Dorian is moving. We've had a ton of questions about this, and now that I can pull it in full screen, I can get my John Madden on, you guys can really see. Okay, so first thing we want to look at is this ridge of high pressure to the east of Dorian. This ridge was actually up near here yesterday, but it has begun to kind of retreat a little bit as this trough digs in from the west of it. Remember, around a ridge of high pressure, the air rotates clockwise. Okay, around a low, counterclockwise. That's why you're seeing Dorian spin in that direction. So I'll draw the arrows for you here. We've got another one right here, ridge of high pressure over the Gulf of Mexico. And all of these upper level patterns, all these upper level features, I should say, have an impact on Dorian. And this trough is actually coming to save our behinds here in the United States. As that trough literally digs in, it will work to kind of push this high off this way toward Bermuda. In fact, that's kind of where this high is supposed to be this time of year. That's why they call it the Bermuda High. In the winter, it actually retreats pretty far northward. But right now, it's sitting just to the east of Dorian. Once that trough continues to dig in, well, that should really not only have an impact on Dorian, but an impact on this high as well, kind of sending it off in this direction. And that should work to kind of begin to nudge Dorian a little bit bit this way. And go figure, that's pretty much the path that the NHC has right now. This ridge of high pressure also kind of emphasizing that push toward the northeast. That's why this turn has been called for days now, as this is kind of the quote-unquote big picture that the NHC has been looking at to diagnose what exactly was going on during this event. So let me pull up the graphics again here. You guys can see me. Hello. Let's keep advancing, and let me pull up a graphic. You know what? Let's go back to the path. Where did it go? Right here. Okay. So I'm going to answer any questions that you have. Now is the time to ask them. Let me advance this out a little bit. Okay, there is the path right there. So if you guys have any questions for me regarding Hurricane Dorian, regarding us here at My Radar, now is the time to ask those questions, and I will answer them. If not, we will say goodbye, and we will prepare for the next live stream. Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson should be in here within the next hour or so, and then she will take you the rest of the way forward, and that will, we really kind of have to figure out what our plans are going to be here at My Radar, considering overnight tonight and into tomorrow, Dorian is likely to be, right outside of Orlando, just sitting off the coastline. So it's just a matter of how it will impact us here and how we will be able to continue our coverage of Dorian to get the latest information to you. Okay, so we've got some questions from Twitter here. Do you expect it to ever get above 2 to 8 miles per hour? I take it you're talking about the storm movement, and yes, I would expect that as that northeastward turn continues to occur, Dorian's really going to pick up some steam at that point and start to hustle out of here. Notice the NHC really showing that thing speeds up, whether it be through Wednesday or Thursday. In just 3 days from now, it has it all the way up into Virginia. So it's kind of gaining momentum now, and it should continue to really increase here over the next couple of days. Metal Duck Simon asking, does the Gulf Stream have a part to play on the path? Absolutely. The Gulf Stream has a part to play, let alone the water vapor and the upper air features. The Gulf Stream, of course, he's talking about the stream that, essentially takes the cooler water, or the warmer water rather, from the Gulf and the Caribbean Sea and sends it up the Atlantic seaboard. So yes, the Gulf Stream will have a role to play. Lynn saying, I live in Miami. Do I have to worry? At this point, Miami is not in the cone, and at this point, Miami is kind of dealing with the worst that it's going to deal with from Dorian. Likely just going to be some thunderstorms, some gusty winds, maybe, again, the rough seas, and maybe even a little storm surge near you. But otherwise, it looks like Miami is dodging a major bullet here. What else do we have here? Someone is asking, could it be possible for Dorian to reorganize and grow? As far as reorganize, do you mean like re-strengthen to a Category 5, something like that? Once a hurricane starts to weaken a little bit, it's not impossible for it to strengthen back up a little bit, but these are really, really big systems. So once it starts to have, parts of its inner workings start to kind of fail and dissipate, it's really hard to kind of stop and then change course, right? I wouldn't expect it to strengthen, considering it's working its way northward, the water getting a little bit cooler, and it's been stationary for so long that it's kind of already sucked up a lot of the warm water sitting at the surface. Now, the cooler water from deeper in the ocean and in the Caribbean is coming to the surface, and that is what's getting sucked up into the storm, kind of gunking up the works, if you will. These storms do not like cold water. They want it to be nice and warm so they can keep that convection going. But cooler water, through a process called upwelling, you can talk to your friends about that one, or to impress your friends, I should say, through a process called upwelling, that cooler water getting pulled up higher into this storm and kind of working to almost sabotage it a little bit from within. So I wouldn't expect Dorian to re-intensify and to become a Category 4 or 5 again. It could certainly strengthen maybe a smidge, but I think that at this point it has begun its kind of third act, if you will. Someone asking, will this hurricane act like a fan and suck out the humidity in Florida? Unfortunately, quite the opposite. As we talked about, air moves from high to low pressure, right? That's why, your ears start when you go higher up into the atmosphere. You're flying in a plane, and your ears, your ears start to pop. That's because pressure is, tightening. The pressure is dropping. So actually, what's going to happen as Dorian passes? I got to advance this here so I can draw on the map here. So as Dorian advances out to the North Carolina area, so about here, remember. Essentially what's going to happen here is this trough digs in. All the air from the Gulf of Mexico is going to follow Dorian. So in fact, what's going to happen here as Dorian begins to exit is all of this warm, wet air is heading this way. So it is about to get very humid and very warm here in Florida following Dorian's passage. What else we got here? Another one saying, I live in Jacksonville. Do you anticipate the storm surge to change drastically with the storm weakening? A great question. So as the storm weakens, of course, storm surge, yes, would weaken a little bit, but keep in mind that the wind field is expanding. So while the storm surge may not necessarily be as intense, it's not like you're necessarily just going to see it drop off fully just because the storm is weakening. So let me pull that graphic back up for you, and we'll take a look at it. You are still under a storm surge warning in Jacksonville, right up in here. So I would take that very, very seriously, especially if you live by Doctor's Inlet off of the St. Johns River. Yeah, I would... Again, have your plan ready to go just in case. It will be a Category 2 by the time it comes to you. Do we have any other questions and comments? Looks like I have covered pretty much everything. Okay, then that is going to just about do it. Man, we have got these things down to a science, 20 to 30 minutes of talking to you guys. So what I will say is, before I let you go, is if you are watching here on YouTube, you're watching on social media, well, please drop us a follow on our other social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already. Please click on that subscribe button and then click on that notification bell. That way you always know whenever we drop a new video, and you know when we are live as well. On the YouTube channel, you can find plenty of interesting stuff. Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson actually did a special on the hurricane season. It's called The Mean Season. It's 5 parts. I highly suggest you check it out. She worked super hard on it, and it's really, really interesting stuff, especially if you can't get enough of the weather. Check that out. There are podcasts up there where we talk to some of your favorite meteorologists from around the country. WBZ's Eric Fisher in Boston. We spoke with James Spann in Alabama, of course, a legendary meteorologist for the Gulf states. Check all that out and more, youtube.com/myradar. That's going to do it for me. Again, I have been meteorologist Mike Linden. Follow me on social media as well, at Mike Linden WX, and don't forget to download the My Radar app as well. iOS, Android, Windows, Amazon Alexa. We are taking over. We are everywhere. From all of us here in Orlando in the My Radar studios, stay safe, stay dry, and we'll catch you in the next one.